So I'm perusing the Nike app, come across the Nike React Hyperdunk 2017 lows, figured I'd just review them because they're there, they're available now. I figured people would be interested, not really realizing what I would find once I cut them open, especially when looking at the uppers of them, and a lot more than meets the eye. Let's get into it. And the reason I say there's a lot more than meets the eye, it's because the uppers make it look like these shoes are pretty plain. I mean, really, it's just a textile and TPU, very thick blocked weave that goes throughout the entire uppers. Yeah, there is some stitching around the heel counter for a little bit more support than some padding under that to make it, a little bit more substantial, and a couple, pieces of foxing with these Nike logos, but really, there's not a lot going on in the uppers in terms of stability or containing elements. It does have a runner's knot option with 2 plastic-backed lace eyelets, which I thought was very nice. The tongue is incredibly thin, but incredibly porous. I mean, the weird part about this is they look like they're heat trapping just because of how the uppers look, but if you look at the breathability test on them, only heated up 91.4 degrees. And honestly, that was weird because I had my hand on it all the time and the uppers just weren't really heating up. And then if you look at the breathability mapping of them, really the only place the air was getting out, or I should say fog was getting out, was in the tongue. Now the tongue is also really nice and gusseted, connects up into the ankle collar, so it does stay, put. And it's weird because with Nike basketball, running, and to a certain extent tennis, they all handle heat relatively well given the composition of the shoes. Yes, this is gonna hold on to more moisture because like I said, the only place the fog's coming out, is the tongue. But the materials in the uppers and the midsole foam always seems to handle heat pretty well. And I just think that's interesting because in other parts of their shoes, other companies have really caught up and in some instances surpassed Nike in terms of like midsole materials, outsole materials. But in terms of the uppers, their uppers still handle heat just insanely well, which is pretty interesting. Now, if you look at this on the upper durability test, that's another thing, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. The burr is just working right through that textile. I mean, really, there's no drag guard, there's really nothing on these, and the uppers are pretty soft. So yeah, there's really no doubt that the burr is gonna get right through them. The nice thing is there is a lot of padding here in the forefoot of them. Like I said, the tongue is not super padded, but the forefoot does have some backing. So in terms of your toes and everything, there is actually a little bit more protection than meets the eye than just kind of this outward, almost floppy looking upper. And actually, we more get into that when we get into the fit section because the length profile and how soft they are really kind of make these shoes feel one way when you first get them on and then perform another way once you actually start playing in them. But the midsole teardown is where the 2017 lows really take a left turn into what on Earthsville. So number one, this is the Nike React Hyperdunk. So there is a top-loaded slab of React foam. It's about a 3/4 length React foam. Then under that is an EVA carrier. I mean, it feels like filing under there. You can kind of see on the microscope the delineation to where you get the more plasticky React foam on top and then more of just that almost cookie dough appearing EVA on the bottom. Everything is though, there's a sandwich shank in here, which goes from the rear foot into the midfoot junction of the midfoot and the forefoot. This is a long shank and it's sandwiched between the EVA and the React foam. So also you get a little bit of molding here in the midfoot. I mean, the stack isn't crazy in the rear foot or forefoot, but given how the materials are layered on each other with the React shank and then the EVA, these things have a lot more spring and pop than they appear, especially, like I said, when you put them on for the first time and you kind of you're moving around in them. You look at the bounce height test on these things, 42 centimeters in the rear foot, 40 in the forefoot. That is Zoom Air territory in terms of that bounce height test. And really, it's the interaction of number one, the React and the EVA, but number two, the fact that there's that shank there, there's something rigid, right? That these materials aren't just, the foam is not just bottoming when the ball bearing hits it, right? There's actually something to spring back off of. And I found that to be kind of the most insane part of these. Now, you do have to kind of be the right foot to extract all that, which we'll talk about in the fit section, that really comes down to the size of your foot. But from what the shoes appear to what they actually feel like and perform like underfoot, it's just a 180. It's really nuts. And it's nice to see because some of Nike shoes I've seen recently that are either shankless or just kind of rely on a little bit more dense EVA in the midsole, where you have a shoe like this where it's just two different types of foam that's stacked on top of each other, but it's the interaction between those two foams that give the shoe its outsized performance. You don't need crazy innovation, you don't need crazy new technology. You can use existing technology and it still works well as long as the sum of them are greater than the individual parts. And And following along with the more than meets the eye theme, the outsole tread is absolutely no different. Now the tread on this is very pleasing to the eye, these concentric radial patterns that are all kind of, connected to each other. But it's the grip on these and the profile of that grip as they get older that's the more interesting part. On the grip test ramp initially, these things slip at 36 degrees, which is kind of just in that, a little more forgiving territory, and that's kind of how they felt on court when I first got them on. But once these things heat up, they become one of the best gripping shoes I've had on. And I think that's because on the lateral side, you get a little bit bigger of a diameter of these hollowed out center rings here. And it kind of feels like that's what's, sticking into the ground, almost like a suction cup on an octopus tentacle. And honestly, yeah, they pick up some dust, but it doesn't matter. I mean, these shoes are totally different from putting them on cold to even 5-10 minutes of rubber warming. And that, like I said, that did not go away once there was dust on them. They played very similar in terms of grip to the New Balance Fresh Foam BB V2, which same thing, even though you could feel there was dust on them, still giving you super confident grip. Same thing in these. Now, the containment aspect of that in the uppers, like I said, you really do have to be a little bit more of a stable foot on there because the uppers, like I said, they'll want to bend, whereas the midsole as well as the outsole wants to stay. So we'll get to that when we get to the fit section, but in terms of their gripping and pivoting power, the mid and the outsole is fantastic. It's the uppers that are really the weak link here. With that all being said, you look at the speed ratio of these, coming in at a 3.03, shank score of 0.2, bumps that up to a 3.23. I think that's kind of where they belong. I think, like I said, for the right foot, I think the speed is much, much, much better. For different feet, maybe not so much. Like I said, we'll talk about that in a second. I want to kind of get all my thoughts together in one when we do the fit section on these. But I think for the right foot, these are wickedly fast shoes. And like I said, they stop on a dime so well that you can really pick up speed quick because the first step launch on them is so good because there's really no slip. And I'll tell you, when I was playtesting these the one day, I was having a very, very, very bad day on court. Hadn't been on court in a while, and I was just missing absolutely everything. I was getting super frustrated, and I really wanted to blame the shoes sometimes, right? But I couldn't because the grip was so good. The stability on them was so outstanding in the outsole. So I really, only had myself to blame. I couldn't even pretend it was the shoe's fault in these in terms of grip. I mean, even look at the outsole durability test on these things, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. I mean, not even a millimeter of damage on these. The durometer comes in at over 19. It was a 19.2 on the durometer. So honestly, really nice build quality, especially in the mid and outsole on these. Remember, this is a very thin tread pattern, so outdoor courts, especially gritty outdoor courts, they're still gonna wear down, right? You're still gonna get that melding of the rubber just because there's not much room in between those rubber channels and it is so thin. So still really on an indoor hardwood rubberized court, it's going to do their best work. I think on a very slick outdoor painted court, you might have some better luck versus a grittier court, but to me, especially because of the uppers, the exposed midsole, keeping these on indoor hardwood rubberized courts, I think is probably your best bet. Okay, but talking about the fit of the Hyperdunk lows, this is really the crux of them. They run a little bit long, right? And that's what makes them feel a little bit floppy, especially to a foot like mine, where I have a very bulky, inflared wide foot. So I am not really the best foot type for this shoe because my toes were just not meeting the end of this shoe kind of where they should. So in that instance, right, the ball of your foot isn't meeting where it should in the shoe, and so you're not getting the most out of them. So with me, when I was messing around with the laces in them and I could kind of get my foot a little bit in a better position in them, they felt a lot better versus if I was really locked in the rear foot of the shoe, just felt a tad floppy. And like I said, with the softness of the uppers in them, the uppers feel a little bit floppy too. So I think for certain feet, they're gonna feel a little bit floppy. So a long, slender foot is going to find just outstanding performance in these, especially someone that has a little bit more stability. I'd say a narrow and medium foot, if you can go down a half size, if you're the right shape, then you're gonna get really a nice one-to-one fit on these. But if you're any bit of like a more generous medium, I'd probably just go true to size in a 2E. Yeah, you can fit them true to size and break them in because the uppers are so accommodating, but with an 11-degree in flare on them, you might be a little bit of a mismatch. Same thing for the snake bitten foot. I know everyone always asks me what a snake bite means on your foot. Just means lumps, bumps, bruises, any type of pain. I would say in terms of heel pain, ball of foot pain, arch strain, arch pain, I think with an orthotic, with an intrinsic post, a very deep heel cup could honestly make these shoes a little bit more stable, right? It could add a little bit more stability to the rear foot of the shoe. That's why I say a deeper heel cup. I think for those people, it's fine. And also people that match the shoe up, it's fine. Even, the shank is very long and it is nice. It's gonna protect that foam a little bit. It's gonna load share a little bit. But in terms of more of the accommodation and shock absorption, like I said, I think you just need a little bit more of that molding in the rear foot just to keep the shoe stable enough, right? Especially because the uppers, to keep it from it wanting to allow a lot of micro motion in there. I also think for ankle sprainers, yeah, remember, most of the stability in the shoe comes from the shape of the mid and outsole. The lateral flange is a little bit more mellow and long versus really aggressive on these. So I think ankle sprainer is probably in the best shoe for you. Really any sort of instability, medial instability or lateral instability, at least for medial, like I said, you can throw an orthotic in there, but for lateral, you probably might want to look somewhere else. Yeah, these shoes are very unencumbering, very light-footed, everything like that, but that also has its drawbacks. And that fit profile really does lead into the performance and playability of these. Like I said, I was absolutely shocked at the grip of these and just the confidence that these had, and really just how light-footed they were, right? I mean, I've always liked React foam for a lot of its characteristics on court, and the way that these played in terms of how bottom light they felt, how gripping they felt, right? Just how easy it was to kind of move them around. That's where I think they do their best work. It's somebody with very shifty footwork, someone that really plays up on the balls of their feet a lot. Maybe a lighter weight player with some pretty good leg strength in these can really extract quite a bit of nimble, lightweight performance out of these. Like I said, it was such a surprising shoe to me, especially because I didn't really have any expectations for them. You slap a little bit more of a flagship looking upper on these, maybe a little bit more of a bulky lateral flange. And this is one of Nike's better flagship shoes. I mean, maybe you get the length and width a little bit more dialed into where the rest of Nike is at. But I think for the right person, I mean, this is one of the better ones on the Nike app right now. So it was a little bit odd, weird, but definitely a pleasant surprise. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially coming from the actual 2017s, the React Hyperdunks 2017s, the lows. Love to know if you're giving these ones a try, if you even knew that these were out. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you do want to see another sibling to the React Hyperdunk 2017 low, the Nike Sabrina one going to the knife, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.